do it.
All right, let's roll.
So let's roll. I have with me today Eric Mally, and I would say that if you're a mom out there, you have either heard of Mally A.C.T, used Mally A.C.T, called Mally A.C.T, and if you're a mom out there right now that hasn't, you're panicking. You're like calling your friends, going, "What am I missing?" I have to tell you, I'll give a shout out to my sister-in-law because you said which chick girl. But I remember, and yes, I'm going to date myself as always. My son Ari is now 27, and I remember my sister-in-law, who is the source of wisdom for me of these things. I was like, okay, Ari has to take ACT, and she's like, stop. Here you go. You just need this phone number. And I was like, okay, whatever you say. And you're like a deer in the headlights. And what I've learned as a mom, the best advice is when someone just says, here's a phone number.
You take it and you call.
I really know what I don't know when it comes to parenting or helping your kids. That not to be political, but it does take a village. It takes phone numbers is what it takes. And so Eric, welcome. And I feel as though when I say welcome to you, I'm really welcoming this most amazing family of yours.
Oh, thank you.
Because like I have a 27, 25, and 23-year-old who I have certainly written checks to in your family business. But on the same token, my kids have thrived. And talking to your mom and dad on the phone, scheduling your brother, you came into the business. So I was thrilled that you wanted to sit down and talk to me today about Mally A.C.T. I really am. And I'm going to testimonial all over the place today.
Well, thank you for that.
And I'm gonna say this right off the bat, that I have three very different children and very different learners and very different test takers. And I think that's really important that we're going to talk about. So what I first want you to do, because I've said tell us what Mally A.C.T is, so people really have an understanding about what it is versus what it isn't.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. First and foremost, thanks for having me, and thanks for saying such nice things about my family. Because at the end of the day, when you're a family-owned and operated business, like you have to take a lot of pride in what you do, and we obviously do so. And I'm a very emotional person, and usually whenever I hear such positive sentiment and stuff like that, it's hard not to get verklempt, and it's hard not to get choked up a little bit, because it does make, this is why we do it, right? Like this is why we do what we do.
Well, it is, and you have fabulous parents and great brothers. So
I always say they're the best parents I've ever had. So I think that, so to go back to your original question about Mally A.C.T. So basically, we're a family-owned and operated tutoring service provider. We help students for the ACT, for the SAT, standardized testing, as well as all academic courses, like primarily focused on high school students, though. That seems to be our bread and butter. And we've been open for 14 years. This is our 14th year doing it. And over the past 14 years, we've been fortunate enough to help out more than 8,000 students from over 225 high schools across 20 states. And, when we start, I think that as a family, when we're in the business day to day, like sometimes we got to take a step back and really look and say, like, we've been fortunate enough to help out a lot of students. And, knowing how many options there are in the area, and especially with this virtual world that we're living in, there are even infinite more options available.
Right.
Knowing that we've been so fortunate enough to help out so many students over the years, it's truly a blessing, like that for sure. So.
Yeah. So let me take it back 14 years, because I'd say my nieces and really probably started at the beginning of that, and then my
Hmm.
kids sort of jumped in there.
Yeah.
Um, I guess, I probably answer my own question, but you talked to this is really how the business has changed. I mean,
Yeah.
my son went to the building,
Yeah.
um, he did a test at home. Then
Yeah.
I think you all scored it there, and went through it. So tell me a little bit about really what happens. I'm going to say pre-COVID because and then I'll
Yeah.
ask you how things have changed from.
Yeah, yeah, good question. So really, so 14, so I guess maybe more so 15 years ago, right? So really, the way that it all started was is that my dad was a teacher at the Jewish Academy, and he had been a professor at U of D as well as a cell biologist at Children's Hospital. So science has always been his thing, and somebody told him like, hey, maybe think about tutoring on the side, right? It could be, a good way to help out more students and what have you. And my dad, being the ever nurturer and helper that he is, he was like, help out more students. Like, sure, like I'm all about it. So he started focusing on the science portion of the ACT. And then after a while, parents and students were like, wow, we really could use a math version of you. Do you have a math
Mhm.
version of Michael Malley out there? And my brother was a junior at Michigan at the time, and he has his degree in psychology, and but math has always been his thing. Like he's just always been a numbers junkie, right? So he started coming home on the weekends and tutoring kids out of the Huntington Woods Rec Center teen room, and
Mhm.
he would come home, tutor 20 kids in a weekend, and then go back up to Ann Arbor. So when he graduated, I think that all of us as a family, we were like, okay, we got something going on here, right? Like this is something that we can grow. How do we grow it? So it was a lot of late nights at the Malley household in Huntington Woods, and a lot of times, like my brother would wake me up at like 3 in the morning and be like, "Dude, I got this idea right now. Let's talk about it." I'm like, "Oh man, I just want to sleep right now, man. Come on, let's talk about this stuff." So as a result, like Mally A.C.T was born. Really, we wanted to professionalize tutoring and take it out of coffee shops, out of libraries, out of Paneras, and create sort of this like doctor's office environment for tutoring. And
Mhm.
that's how our first office opened up. We had it was 6 offices on 15 in Farmington. And then about 7 years after that, we had to expand because we were just running out of space and we didn't have enough space for students and tutors to work. And then we moved to 14 in Orchard Lake, and then 2 years at that location, we were like, okay, we're growing again. We need to have a bigger space. So we just moved to the front of our office complex and took over a physical rehab facility place and turned that into our office. And we've been at that location probably for about 7 years now. And that's sort of the crux of it. And really, the growth and talking at the beginning, I was sort of smiling because really, that is how we've grown, was just word of mouth and people talking to people about Mally A.C.T.
Mhm.
And my title of director of marketing is the easiest job in the world because we don't do any marketing. It's all word of mouth. So and it's always
Well,
cousins of cousins, friends of friends, 13th cousins, something like that.
but I, but I think it's easy because, if I must say, is it's it's scary to parents.
Sure.
Of course, I took the ACT. I'm not that old,
Yeah.
but you know, we didn't worry then how you bumped your score up,
Yeah.
that bump the
Yeah.
score up, or how you do that, or that competitive. And I know that's probably, if I had to guess, you know, a good portion of the phone calls you get. My kid has this. I
Yeah.
need this. How do I get there? What's, how do I bump that score?
Yeah.
And when I said I have three different learners, I had two boys who, had, kind of had their sights on Michigan.
Sure.
Both did go there. I had a daughter who, that was not even, she had her sights so far out of Michigan. But you know, the schools want a certain ACT,
Yeah.
SAT, whatever they're looking for, and they get the score back, and they take the test differently. The kids, you can have that 4-point student or that 3.8 student, which luckily I had really good students,
Hmm. Mhm.
I had great students. I'm not being the bragging mom. I had good learners. I didn't have great test takers.
Sure.
I didn't have great ACT test takers, and I think that people have to, the new moms into this world, say, well, my kid's a great test taker. My kid does great in school, and I would say, that's not what this is about. And we can debate whether there should be ACT.
Sure.
I'm not a big proponent of the ACT, SAT.
Sure. Sure.
I will say, but the trick here is that your system, your Mally system, basically teaches a kid to calm down to take the test.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think that, tell me about that, because it is, I used to say, it's not about what they learn day to day or what they know.
Sure.
It's how they take that test.
Absolutely. Really, when it comes to the ACT and the SAT, they're just so much more strategy-based tests than they are knowledge-based tests. And a lot of times, what we do with our students is we focus on how to get the right answer as opposed to why the right answer is right, just because sometimes it's
Mhm.
significantly easier to do it that way. And we don't care how a
Mhm.
student gets the answer. We just want to make sure it's the easiest, most efficient way possible at the end of the day. I think that probably, if your students are the vast majority of students that we see that come to Mally A.C.T, they're the high GPA students that just struggle with standardized testing. And if there are parents out there who are listening or watching or tuning in that are concerned about it, it is just so tremendously common for high GPA students to struggle with the ACT and SAT. And really, it all comes down to the fact that, quite frankly, this test isn't designed toward high GPA students. They're designed toward the
Mhm.
general 11th grade population all across the country, everywhere from Detroit to LA to a rural school in
Mhm.
Alabama with only 20 kids in it, right? So a lot of times our high GPA students sort of have to take a step back and realize that it's a little bit more basic than they think it is. And when they do that, that's
Mhm.
when the pieces of the puzzle start coming together. And we do that through exposure to the test. That's I always say that the key to success on the ACT and SAT is two ingredients. It's strategy and guided exposure. And that's where the guided exposure comes in, is showing the students, hey, this is what the actual ACT and SAT looks like. These are the types of questions that you're going to see. And here's how to handle it. So when they go to take it, it's all the same stuff that they've seen before. It's just delivered on different paper and in a different setting. And I do think that test anxiety is very, very common these days. And I think a lot of it has to do with just the inherent competitive nature of students now. And one thing that we've always prided ourselves on at Mally A.C.T is that we don't want to stress students out any more than they already are, because as juniors in high school, their plate is stacked a mile high, right? So
Right.
we always have a laid back office, and it's very, very big on positive reinforcement, because we want to calm the students down and center them and show them, like, hey, it doesn't need to be difficult, and it doesn't need to be stressful, and it doesn't need to be intense.
I will say that, and again, I sound like one big testimonial, but and I have to guess throw my youngest under the bus on this one. He was my biggest test anxiety kid, and here
Sure.
he is in law school. So
Yeah.
he, is going to be tested and in many ways, and so many of the things that go back to taking the ACT. He froze. I mean, even going
Yeah.
through your system, the very first time he went in, and it's a killer. I mean, I paid for tutoring, paid for the test, and he came home and he's like, I froze. And I'm like, what does that mean? And
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't really understand the true anxiety of test taking, um, because again, he was a junior with exceptional grades at a very good high school. I had never
Sure.
had a teacher in a conference ever say anything to me nor had he ever come home and said, "Oh my God, I froze during," And I'm like, what do you mean?
Where
You
this come
just
from?
got there
Yeah,
at 7:30 or 7:45 in the morning, And I'm like, oh God, we have to do this all over again.
yeah, yeah,
And you do the oh my God, mom thing and dad thing kind of, but we really did. I know I had to call your office and say, okay, like this is what happened,
mhm,
you
mhm,
know, and now we really need to really calm those nerves down.
yeah,
Um, and and I remember, conversations at the time with your dad. Um, I can't remember at the time. I feel like um, science or math came first, which
mhm,
my kids are English. They're English
got it.
history kind of kids.
Sure.
So I think like that, that took them for a spin. And the truth is now, so many years forward, Michigan and doing fine and in law school, he goes back to those skills of calm. It is a
Yeah,
test, the,
yeah,
the tactical. And so I do encourage parents that I know parents, God bless, they love their kids, they think highly of their kids. I do too. My kids are
yeah.
the greatest. Um, but but kids need tricks
Sure.
to doing things, and that is definitely the thing I learned quickly about these standardized tests. There are tricks to it. There are, when it comes to writing a college essay, you know there are tricks
There's
to it.
always
There
tricks.
aren't.
Yeah. And I think that,
Yeah.
knowing about like test anxiety and stuff like that, that's one of the first questions that we ask our new students when they come in is, do you have test anxiety? And it's not because we want to know about if whether or not the student suffers from test anxiety, but more so it's like to let them know like, hey, it's common. Like we're gonna work with you
Yeah.
on this, and we're gonna come like this doesn't need to be an anxiety driving process for you. So like letting them know that hey, it's common. Lots of students have it, and we're just not the type of place that's going to make you more anxious. That helps calm not only students but parents down too, because just as much as we have to work with students, like we also have to work with the parents too and make it so that they understand what's going on. Like I always say, like my role in the business nowadays is I tutor the parents and I tutor the parents about the
Oh
process and
my.
everything.
Look, I think that's probably worse than that. I think the kids are the easy part. It's the
No
parents.
comment.
Look, I know you won't comment. I'll comment. Us parents were terrible. Um, I noticed, like, let's talk a little bit about a couple things with your
Mm-hmm.
business
Yeah,
today, that because technology has changed and
yeah,
kids are virtual. We're
yeah,
virtual right now and all that. So tell me a little bit about how kids today can get to you, how parents can get to you
yeah.
in our pandemic world.
Yeah. So, really, obviously, I mean, things have changed, right? Like businesses and small businesses, big businesses, everybody, we've had to adapt, right? And I don't think that anybody had ever seen something like this, on the radar. I thought that this would be on the horizon for us. Really, for students, like the best first step is that every time we get a new student or have a new student that wants to work with us, the first thing that we do is a new student consultation. And I know we talked about using acuity in the messages that we were sending back and
Yeah.
forth. And if there has been one tool that has single-handedly organized and driven such an amazing process improvement for us, it's acuity, because the big issue that we used to have was playing phone tag. And just parents
Oh,
would call us up, we'd call them back, they'd be in a meeting, they'd be at a doctor or something like that, and then it would be like a 2-week process before you get a hold. So I always do the new student consultations, and I'll spend a good half hour, 45 minutes with parents, because it like, well, first off, for parents to ask me questions, and because it is like, even in a pre-coronavirus world, college applications and admissions and standardized testing is confusing, and you add coronavirus into the mix, and it
right.
just makes the muddy process even muddier, right? So I always do a new
Hmm.
student consultation, and then really from a tutoring standpoint, we're entirely virtual right now. It's kind of a blessing in disguise because we've been online tutoring for over 10 years now. And just because we've seen students from over 20 states over the past 14 years and things, and so we had to have a good online process in place. About a year ago, I was looking at things. I'm a process improvement guy. Like that's like nothing drives me crazier than when I see a process that I feel is inefficient, right? And I was looking at, I was like, man, we could probably smooth out the rough edges on online. I know that they're few and far between, but at the end of the day, we want to make it as smooth as possible. And luckily for us, we smoothed out our online process 5 months before the pandemic broke. So if it wasn't for those conversations with me and my brother, like really trying to put things down and figure things out, who knows what could have happened in those first few weeks for us,
Wow,
in March, because we had everything ready to roll. All we had to do was flip a switch. Now, surely, as those first, end of March, early April, as those weeks went on, we adapted. We changed, we optimized, we made things more efficient. Problems that we didn't foresee happening were happening. Problems that we thought were going to happen were not happening. So, we changed things along the way. But really, right now, the feedback that we receive from our parents and students has just been so overwhelmingly positive at how efficient it is and how effective online tutoring is that we got an office on Orchard Lake that, we're just not in a hurry to get back to at this point because everything's going so smoothly.
And I think that's what people are finding, in the office world. But I think that more so that you have kids who are, whether they're Zoomed out or not, they know that this is an important added value, and they want to get into college. They want to get to college. They want to have a college experience, and their high school experience is going on. And at this point, they're not seeing a change in what colleges are looking for. They're not getting out of at this point the ACT.
Sure.
I mean, there's a story here and there every once in a while that this school isn't going to want scores anymore, and then the truth of the matter is, they've got to figure out if they're going to ever do that, how they're going to evaluate taking in kids. So, they obviously came up with the testing system to have some evaluation. They added then the essays to add another layer of that evaluation. So, they're always going to have a process of evaluation, and the kids and the parents who come along with those kids are always going to, need to have you in that process. I want to make sure everybody knows how to find you. And I want to say when they do that you should sort of bum around the website, which I got to do the other day, because there's webinars, there's all kinds of great information. And the best part is that you don't have to drive down Orchard Lake anymore at 4 o'clock. Your kid is exhausted. And traffic, and you're feeding them, and their lacrosse gear is in the bag because you're going to pick them up and then go from Mally tutoring to lacrosse, and they're annoyed with you. And you're not sure which part they're annoyed with, but
Right. Yeah.
You're like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to be a good parent, because eventually they can drive themselves down Orchard Lake and be pissed at you.
It is funny because so we do see a lot of students from Windsor, for students that, if they live in Windsor and they go to some private schools in the States or things like that, or if they want to go to college in the States. And we've seen a few families, and, one of them, we're seeing, oh man, it's either their middle or their youngest right now, and everything's online. And he was, his brother was like, wow, I can't believe that you got it easy. You just got to sit, in your bedroom and log in. Whereas I had to go through the tunnel every day and try to get to West Bloomfield in time for my son.
Oh my God. Okay. So I feel better. I just had to drive down Orchard Lake and have my kids. They would usually give me a little grief, but then they would get in the car, and I think, if I recall, your mom had a candy dish on the counter or something, on that. So There'd be a Tootsie Roll or something at the end
Yeah,
of the
something,
tutoring
something for
session,
your
and I'd be
trouble.
like off the
Yeah.
hook.
Yeah.
Yeah, like thanks.
Yeah. I mean, so
So how does everyone find
yep.
find Mally tutoring?
Yep, the easiest way to do it is just go to MallyACT.com. And you brought up a great point, and there's just a ton of information on there. And if you're a student, a parent of a junior, a senior, a sophomore, or an eighth grader, like whatever, there's probably something on there that you can find informative. Now, one thing, the best bet would be, like, if you're a parent and you have any questions, like, book a free new student consultation with me. Like, it's entirely free. This way, because every student's different, and just like with your children,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, every student's different, and the way that we operate is we create a game plan for each individual student on a student by student basis. So, there might be some situations where, like, we give, what Joe Schmo a certain plan of action, and then we give, Billy Buttons a different plan of action, because those are two different
Right.
types of students. So the new student consultation is the best bet, because, like, I'll spend a good half hour, 45 minutes with parents, talking to them, answering any questions. And I always tell parents and students, and this is something that we've always said, that even if you don't book appointments with us, and if you have any questions, call us. Use this as a resource. We're here to help. We're here to make a confusing process as the least confusing as possible. And
Right.
we live and breathe this stuff. So odds are, if you're a parent out there watching and you have a question that you're thinking about, I've probably answered it like 100 times over the years. So, give me a call,
Yeah.
shoot me an email. I'm always happy to talk things through.
So, Eric, I can't thank you enough. Send my best regards to your
Oh,
family.
of course.
MallyACT.com. I can only tell you, parents, that we're good. We're good parents, but the truth is that, I like I said, I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. My kids were really quick in March to tell me, thank God, that they were pretty much out of school during this pandemic, because
Yeah.
I'd be a terrible teacher if they were home trying
Oh,
to
boy.
Zoom. But I can tell you that I was smart enough to call Mally ACT when my kids needed it. And I can tell you that there are resources out there when your kids need to get standardized testing for college. When you get frustrated that your kid can't get that one extra point. Because
Sure.
believe me, I'm sure you've had that parent call, my kid just needs a 32.
Always.
And it's like,
Always.
I'm sure I was that parent to your dad going, he just needs that 32. How do I get that one extra point?
Yep. We get
So,
them all too often.
or why did he drop this time? So it's called Breathe, parents, and call
Right,
Mally
yeah. Everything's
ACT.
gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be fine. We'll help
Everybody
you guys
will. Right. My other word of advice on that: there is a place for every kid.
Yep.
That is for sure. So,
Yep,
Eric,
absolutely.
thank you so much. I am so happy that you spent this time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great. Right back to you.
Oh, good.